something happened to you tomorrow, what happens to your home? And not what do you think happens to your home, what actually happens. Today, we're going to be talking about something that is way more important than I think we give credit for. We're going to be talking about estate planning, what it takes to protect your home long term, not just for you, but for your family. Hey everyone, my name is Tabitha or Tabi Klein, the ILM Realtor, helping you find your home between the river and the sea. Today, we're talking with Scott Donaldson of Cline Donaldson Law Firm. They help everybody take the next steps from before you own your home to after you own your home. So let me welcome Scott. Hi, Scott. How are you doing today?
Doing well, Tabitha. Thank you.
I'm so excited. We are having a 3-part series with the Cline Donaldson Law Firm. So I am going to be breaking down different aspects of homeownership. So let's get to know you a little bit. Fun fact, I heard you just had a baby.
Yes, we just welcomed baby boy Nash. He turned 6 months last weekend. He is the third of 3. We have Kennedy, who is 7 years old, Sailor, who is 6, and little Nash, who is now 6 months old.
That's a gap. You waited.
I did, and I'll tell you what, it's a whole lot harder at 38 than it was at 31 or 32. And purely for the fact that I function on less sleep now, but when I wake up, I don't fall back asleep because the emails start and then it's all over from there.
It is all over. Every morning that I wake up, I'm like, how am I going to stimulate my brain? I'm like, I'll work some, and it's always the wrong choice.
Absolutely. I definitely understand that.
All right, so we're going to jump in. Question number 1, bare bones. What is estate planning kind of at its core?
Sure. So estate planning is just a means of accounting for your assets and making sure that your estate passes on to the people that you care about.
Okay, so kind of in my head, okay, if something happens to me, it's my husband's. If something happened, like my husband and I get in a plane crash, it goes to the kids. But that might not necessarily be the case because they're minors and every other question in the world. So your job is making sure that everything, even beyond the house, really.
Yeah. So all of your assets, your personal property, your house, your cars, your collectibles, your Barry Bonds rookie card, anything that you can think of, estate planning is making sure that you have a way to pass that to the people you want it to. And maybe not just the people, but maybe the charities that you want it to go to or the church that you want it to go to. So it is getting your affairs in order for what happens when you are no longer here, ensuring that the stuff that you've worked hard for passes on to the people that you want it to.
That is super important. Why is estate planning specifically important to homeowners?
Sure. So I think homeowners, a home is generally one of the largest assets that you own, right? It's one of the most valuable assets that you own. So it's really important for people to think about those things and to make sure that that asset is being protected and that it is going to the people that we want it to go to, and it is going in a way that allows them to use it in the way that they intend to use it.
That makes sense because I know that, for example, I have a friend who has a giantly beautiful, amazing beach property. And if in my head, that's going to go to the whole family and it's millions of dollars. And what happens if they're like, oh no, we have to liquidate this asset, and then the family beach house is gone. So you're really in charge of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's also sometimes a misnomer that, hey, when I die, if I'm married, everything is automatically going to go to my spouse. Well, if we don't have estate plans in place, and I know we'll talk about this a little bit more, but that is not the effect of what generally happens with potentially a singly owned home. A beach house is another case. Absolutely. You want to make best use of that. You want your family to be able to continue using and enjoying that beach property, right? So we want to plan for those things. We want to make sure that that does not have to be sold for creditor issues, that it does not escheat to people that we don't think about, that long-term care gets involved, that it doesn't go to Medicaid. So there's a number of different things that can occur if we don't do proper planning and ensuring that these pieces of real estate are passed on to the people that we love and care about.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to say is I don't know what I don't know. And when we've never been educated about this stuff, it's not something that you learn about in high school or college, really. You run the risk of assuming. And so we want to get rid of a bunch of those assumptions. But one of the things that you said, I want you to clarify on, because you said escheat. Give me a quick definition of that.
Sure. So by statute, there is a way that if you do not have any legal heirs to pass your property to, that the state of North Carolina could end up being the beneficiary of your estate.
Wild.
Yes.
I love that.
And I've had one situation where I had a client who came to me and his grandfather ended up losing a bunch of farmland to the state of North Carolina as a result of no estate planning, essentially.
Goodness.
Yes.
So that wasn't a situation where it like went to the heirs, or did it not?
Had no, at that point, he had no legal heirs. And the state of North Carolina ended up being the legal heir at that point because this was an afterborn child that was not in the picture at the time that the property passed.
Yeah. We think about that where even if your home isn't being passed down to somebody, you would still need estate planning because say you did have a favorite organization or a church or a long best friend that just like, hey, I want to take care of this person. If you don't take the right steps, it's going to the state of North Carolina.
Yeah. So state of North Carolina has what they call intestate succession statutes that if you do not
That's a very big word.
It sure is. If you do not have a will or if you do not have a trust or if you do not have mechanisms for that property to pass through rights of survivorship or stuff like that, well, those statutes step in and control where that property goes. And it generally is not where we think it would go. So it doesn't account for friends, doesn't account for anybody. Actually, up and until December of 2025 of this year, it didn't account for children that were born out of wedlock, even if they were on the birth certificates.
What?
There had to be a formal legitimation that occurred at the courthouse in order for that person to receive, which is why you had more property and ending up escheating to the state of North Carolina, because even children that were born were possibly not considered legitimate children to receive the money.
I don't like that, not one bit. I mean, it got fixed,
yes.
But
yeah.
So my mother-in-law recently was working with her sister who had passed away. They had children, and everybody was, who's going to pay off the house? How is this going to work? Who's paying for the funeral? How long does this stuff normally take when it comes to estate planning? Because in my head, it shouldn't take that long. We've got access to some of the funds, but I feel like on paper, it could be significantly longer.
Yeah, so I think the estate planning is usually the quicker portion of it. The estate administration, when somebody passes away, is typically what takes a longer amount of time. If we have a will or if we don't have a will, we end up in the process we all know and love as probate.
Probate.
Yes.
Definition, please.
So probate is the court administered process or court supervised process of carrying out somebody's estate in the event they have a will or they do not have a will. If they have a will, the will has to be submitted to the courthouse. The courthouse has to approve the will, make sure that it meets the statutory requirements of a will, and then it formally gets admitted to probate. And the clerk in North Carolina supervises the terms of that will and making sure that your property passes to the people that it's supposed to, that we've paid off all of your debts, any outstanding taxes, all of that funeral costs, all of those lovely things. So there was a 2020 study, I believe, that was done by trustandwill.com, and they found that the average timeline for a probate is about 20 months. So
Ouch.
That is potentially 20 months that your heirs, your loved ones are kind of sitting on their hands waiting for this thing to be wrapped up before they can potentially get access to those funds that they might need to carry out their living and carry on their living. So
with estate planning, with a will, with all of those things, that probate kind of phase can be sped up.
Yeah, I mean, we can add more direction in a will through a probate to speed up some of the direction as far as selling the real estate. If we give that property to the executor under your will and direct your executor to sell the property, and we give him the authority that he does not need to petition the courthouse to sell that property, we can certainly alleviate a lot of the delays.
Yeah, speed things up
in
for
that
sure.
Process. Yes, absolutely. Kind of just an example we just stepped into a deal where there was issues with real estate and potential breaches that were potentially occurring as a result of a delayed sale as part of the estate. Come to find out that the way it was set up, there were not permissions for that person to petition the courthouse to sell the property. And there were some issues that were pertaining to that. So yeah, I mean, we can alleviate a lot of those things with proper planning. And then we can also structure things in a way that pass outside of the courthouse that we don't need to utilize probate. We have living trusts, we have survivorship deeds, we have life estate deeds. We have a number of different estate planning tools depending on what your goals are, what your budget is that can accomplish some of these things. And there's pros and cons to each of them, but obviously that would be kind of a fact-finding mission for us to find out what your goals are and how we can best accomplish those and keep it within your budget.
That feels like like when I'm onboarding a client and I'm like, hey, what is it that you're looking for? What is it that you need out of this property? And you're kind of doing the same thing. Like, what do you want this to look like afterwards? And kind of doing the research and digging deep so you know which direction to point them in. Tell me if this is wrong, because in my brain always likes to take a word that I might not feel the most comfortable with and kind of correlate it to something. Is probate kind of almost like house purgatory? Like, is it kind of the same where you're stuck in between?
Yeah, so it's funny because we get this question a lot, and I think
I'm not the only one.
We are in the unique position that a lot of our practice is real estate and a lot of our practice is estate administration and probate. So we get to deal a lot with transition of homes after somebody passes away. And I would say that is the largest misunderstood area, probably with respect to real estate and also estate administration.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because in North Carolina, your property actually is not an estate asset. It does not belong to the estate in North Carolina. We are not what we call a uniform probate code state, which a uniform probate code is basically a bunch of people a whole lot smarter than I ever will be, got together, they wrote up a whole bunch of laws, and they went around to all of the different states and they offered it to the states and said, hey, do you guys want to follow this? Some states chose to adopt it, others didn't. The ones who did are uniform probate code states. We did not choose to adopt it, so we are not a uniform probate code state.
Thanks, North Carolina.
Exactly. So our laws differ from a lot of state laws. And one of those differences is that real estate technically belongs to the beneficiaries on the day that that decedent dies, the person dies. So whether you have a will or you don't have a will, that property belongs to the beneficiaries that you've intended. If you don't have a will, it belongs to the beneficiaries according to the statute. If you do have a will, it belongs to the beneficiaries under the will on the day you die.
Not confusing at all.
100% confusing. Pick up the phone and call us because it's confusing. But in order for that to be formalized, you have to probate the will, right? So the day you probate the will, it retroactively puts ownership of the real estate back to the beneficiaries.
Okay.
Well, what does that mean? Well, that means the beneficiaries are responsible for paying the utilities on the house. They're responsible for paying the property taxes on the house, any carrying cost, HOA fees, anything like that. And oftentimes these beneficiaries don't have that money to pay for those things, right?
Yeah. If we're talking about the multi-million-dollar beach house and it's just going to someone, now all of a sudden you're responsible for this, but you also don't have access to the funds yet for potentially up to 20 months.
Correct. So it does handcuff a lot of people, and there are agreements that can be put in place to allow for money to be spent from the estate and stuff like that. But kind of cycle back a little bit. We said that the property is owned by the beneficiaries on the day you die, and it doesn't belong to the estate. So why do we need to open a probate in the first place? Well, we need to open a probate because of the wonderful thing we all know and love is title insurance, right?
Yes. I did a whole podcast on title insurance. So we won't dig into that a ton,
Correct.
But if you want to know more about title insurance, what it is, why it works, all of that, I think it's episode 7 or 8.
Excellent. And yeah, the reason title insurance comes into play is because they're worried that when somebody dies, if they have outstanding debts, that those debts are going to attach to the real estate, right? Mm-hmm. And they don't want that to occur. So they want an assurance that there are no creditors. When you open a probate, you run a notice to creditors in the newspaper that cuts off any creditor rights after 90 days from the publication date.
Interesting.
So the title insurance company can take a deep breath. They can say, hey, we can go forward and sell this property now because we're indemnified. We're not going to there's nobody coming after us at this point, right?
Right.
So that's the need for the probate. The effect of it is sit on your hands for 20 months and wait for this money to come and try and figure out a way to pay for utilities and carrying costs and all that fun stuff.
Super messy is what I'm hearing. But one of the things that I keep thinking about is this isn't something that people are really considering when they're buying their home. We are taking on a responsibility more than just we need to pay a mortgage, we need to get insurance. We really need to be thinking about when we purchase the home, what we're doing with it long term. And I am guilty as charged. I continue to drag my feet on finally signing off. And a lot of it has to do with, it's hard to be like, well, who gets the kids? Who gets the house? Who gets the this? But at the end of the day, if I don't make any decision, the decision's going to be made for me. So thank you for putting pressure on me to do that. One of the other big questions, and then I think we'll start going into no dumb questions, which is my favorite segment, is you talked real quick about the living trusts. So we hear about trust. I think trust fund babies. Again, that's me correlating those two words in my head, trust versus living trust. Can we dig into that real quick?
Yeah. So there are a number of different type of trusts. There are two main categories, I guess you would call them. There are irrevocable trusts and there are revocable trusts. The most common type of trust we see are revocable trusts, also called living trust because they are created during your lifetime. You can also have a trust that's created under your will that doesn't get funded until the time we pass away, which is called a testamentary trust. So living versus testamentary, 100% are kind of the different sides of the coin there. When I say funding a trust, I mean, in order to establish a trust, you need to retitle property to that trust.
Okay.
In order to fund that trust, to put assets into that trust for the trustee to manage, right? When do we fund that trust makes it living versus testamentary. If we fund it during your lifetime, it's a living trust. If we fund it through a will at the time you pass away, then it's a testamentary trust.
Interesting. I feel like that is a whole podcast just on those two topics.
Yeah.
But I at least want people to be thinking about the different options that they have just under that bubble. Okay. No dumb questions. This is my favorite segment because I feel like one of the reasons that people don't really dig into this is because they are afraid of asking the wrong question or feeling like they don't have the right knowledge even coming into it. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have in coming to you that you have to correct?
Sure. I think probably the biggest one that I see is that only rich people need to do estate planning. And to me, I think it's actually the opposite. I think the people that benefit the most from estate planning are people of limited means, because as we spoke about earlier, if we are passing a house on to somebody and those beneficiaries are going to be responsible for paying those carrying costs and they don't have the means to pay those carrying costs, well, you're now in a situation where you might end up in a tax foreclosure, or you might end up in some other situation where that house is going to somebody that you don't want it to go to, or you're in a long-term care situation and Medicaid estate recovery is stepping in and they're saying, hey, look, that house is ours now. We're selling it. I want every last drop of dollar that I paid to you out of this house, and then you can have whatever else is left over. Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest misconception I see. Maybe another one being that only people who are close to death need estate planning. Only older people need to do estate planning.
You never know when death is going to knock at your door.
And that could not be more true. So my previous job was actually in law enforcement, and I was a treasurer for the union. And one of the things that we offered was a legal service offerings plan. And you got free, simple estate planning documents, power of attorneys, wills, all of those things were included in the plan, and nobody would do them. So what we used to do is I used to have to kind of give a kick in the butt every now and then to tell everybody, listen, you are not bulletproof. At the end of the day, you don't know when your last day is. And you do not want to end up in a situation where your loved ones have to scramble or go get court involvement because you haven't given a power of attorney, and you are the bread maker for the family, and now your funds are stuck and they can't get access to them. So yeah, I mean, I think oftentimes we don't like to think about these things. Death, money, divorce, all of these things are not fun conversations to have. And honestly, in my consultations, I usually lead with that we are going to be talking about some sensitive stuff today, but I understand why it's an easy thing to kick the can down the road on. But unfortunately, it is not one that you really should kick the can down the road on. It's let's go get some peace of mind. Let's put this in place. Let's make sure that it's there. And then everything that you put in place today can be changed tomorrow, right? We can always amend plans as we move forward, as life changes, as goals change. So this plan changes with your life as you do.
Love it. So following up on that program, when you were working with the police department, is that program still available? Yeah,
so there are legal service plans. There's some in North Carolina as well. I know that there's certain requirements to have them like recorded and registered with the state bar. I think MetLife is one that offers a legal service offerings, and basically they will connect you with an attorney for a flat fee or for a free simple document based on what they have. I know there are certain banks that offer free estate planning. I believe SECU, State Employees Credit Union, I believe their members or their account holders get some free simple estate planning documents. There are some others as well that I don't have off the top of my head, but definitely check into benefits that you have through credit card companies, through banks, to find out what actually they're offering you and start taking advantage of those, because we don't always know what they are, but they're there.
Exactly that. I don't feel like talking about this. This is a really hard conversation. I don't want to seem dumb, but maybe the thought is I don't have the money for this right now. I don't have the funds. I think that there are enough programs out there and companies that will help do this, that you don't have to be a millionaire to protect your funds. And like you said, some of the people who need it the most are some of those people that need to protect the assets that they have for their family.
Yeah. And one neat little fact about North Carolina, we do allow for what we call holographic wills. What does that mean? Well, that means a handwritten will.
Sci-fi.
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
So you can sit at home tonight and you can write down what you want to happen to your property. As long as that will is written completely in your handwriting, it is signed, it is dated, and you have, after the day you pass away, 3 affiants, we'll call them, or people willing to testify that that is your handwriting or that was your handwriting when that will was created, well, that will can also be admitted to probate.
As helpful as I think that statement just was, you might have just caused a lot of family drama as grandpa sits there and writes it out to his favorite grandchild. And it's like, I thought we were all sharing this.
Well, that is very true. I mean, I wouldn't be here if there wasn't estate litigation either.
There you go.
I mean, you do. Unfortunately, when there is death, there is money involved. There is generally also some litigation involved from time to time. So we get the Jerry Springers, we get it all.
It brings out the worst in people,
Sure does.
For sure. Remember, my stepfather passed away relatively quickly, and it was cancer. It took him in a couple of months, I believe, and he was remarried to my mom. They had one child together, but he had 5 children in his previous marriage, and they all wanted a piece. My mom was still raising this baby. And so it got so dirty. It got so messy. Everybody was angry with each other and it kind of broke up the family. But that's why it's so important. It's not my fault if this is what he wrote. It's not my fault if he didn't write anything. Death is hard enough. Divorce is hard enough. We don't need to add who's getting what to the list.
Yeah.
It's decided for us.
Absolutely. And blended family planning is, I think, one of the biggest things that we see now. Obviously, blended families were not a strong consideration many, many years ago when the ancient people up in Raleigh sat down and put these statutes in place, right? So
like that law that you were like, oh, well, it wasn't a married whatever.
Legitimated child.
Legitimated child.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm mad that it took until 2025 for us to figure out that probably should be a law that goes.
100%. But yeah, I mean, and then there's always the consideration that if I die without a will, everything goes to my spouse. Well, if you don't own that house as a married couple, if one spouse owns that house and they pass away and there are children at play, a percentage of that property is actually going to go to the children and not the spouse. And it can also, if there are no children, go to the spouse and parents. So your spouse could own a house with their mother-in-law if they do not have estate planning in place. And we all know how well that would go.
If you love your spouse, you should probably do something today about this situation. What is the difference when you talk about, like, I've been staying at home with my kids for a long time. Real estate is something that I've gotten into full-time in the last few years. I don't believe that I am on, and again, we should probably clarify this information. The loan on the property is mostly through my husband because he was our primary breadwinner. He is the one that is financing our mortgage. But I'm on the deed. Does that make any difference?
Yes. So if you were on the deed, you are in the better position. And there actually was just a Court of Appeals case on this whole exact situation. And I'm
asking a good question. That's what I'm hearing.
Dive too much into that. But yes, if you are on the deed, you have the benefits without the responsibilities, essentially. Now, that's not to say if something happened to your husband, if you guys are on it as husband and wife, you guys have what we call tenancy by the entirety in North Carolina.
That was the worst part of the real estate exam is tenancy in common, tenancy in entirety.
Yes. So what does that mean? That means there is survivorship built in. So either spouse passes away, that property, that real estate automatically belongs to the other spouse.
Yes. There
is also some creditor protection that if either of you get sued, they cannot attach a lien against the primary residence unless they have a judgment against both of you.
Okay.
But I say all that to say, if your husband passes away first, and in our consultations, we always say the husband passes first because our wives love us to death, but if your husband...
It's because they make dumb decisions, like they go fishing without life jackets and fall off boats. That is why.
That is very, very true, but we'll go with my answer. But yeah, so if he passed away first, well, you would take that house subject to the mortgage still. Even though you are not on the mortgage, you do not get that house free and clear. You still would have to continue to pay the mortgage. Now, you can assume that mortgage in a number of ways, whether there's a formal assumption through the mortgage company or you just continue to pay the mortgage. Again, would be a discussion for, hopefully not a discussion that'll ever occur, but if it does, would be a discussion after the fact.
But again, good to know.
Yes.
It's information that we should be thinking about when we're signing those papers at the closing table. Like, hey, you get hit by a bus tomorrow. What's going to happen?
Yes.
I didn't love you to death. Maybe I hit you with the bus. Okay. I loved this. It was incredibly helpful. I just want to wrap up a few details and then we will button up. But if you were going to give somebody one solid piece of advice, one nugget to take away from this entire podcast, what would it be?
Just start organizing your affairs. Get everything in order. Include information for your loved ones. Let them know what to do if something happens to you. Just start getting your affairs in order. And I know it's an easy thing to kick off. We can think about this thing tomorrow, but you don't know if tomorrow's going to be there. So let's do it today.
Awesome. Well, Scott, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I truly appreciate your wisdom and knowledge and bringing it here to share with the people of Wilmington and really greater North Carolina. So thanks again. I really enjoyed it. I feel like this is one of those topics that is never really front of mind. And then when it does pop up, it's like, I'll handle that later. So whether it's today, but not 5 years from now, I encourage you to take the next step in this journey of figuring out how to protect not only your property, but your family's property. Until the next time, thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you around our perfect little city.